Welcome to Trade Secrets, Remodeling with NARI, the show where we help remodelers build stronger, more professional, and more successful businesses. I'm Anthony Lopez, Director of Business Development at the National Association of the Remodeling Industry. Today, I'm joined by Forrest Castile, owner and president of Castile Kitchen Bath, an active NARI member, and a presenter from our recent annual conference in Tempe. Forrest's session focused on a topic that every remodeling business owner cares about, but doesn't always talk about enough: protecting profit during production. In this episode, we're going to talk about the impossibles in remodeling and how they might actually be possible as they're a result of a controlled system. We're going to zero in on project completion and Forrest's 60-day tune-up process, which really stood out to me and many attendees at the conference. Forrest, you kicked off by stating the impossibles in remodeling, and I just want to name those four off here before we get started. The first is complete the project within 1% of the estimate. Second, finish on the planned completion date. Third, collect 100% of the contract before the project is completed. And last, have a zero-punch completion. So Forrest, before we jump into the topic, and that is not a frog pun, and we'll tell the audience a little bit about that, please tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to focus so heavily on production and profitability.
Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate that. And I appreciate you having me here today. I'm really excited to share what I know on this topic. It's been a long time putting this stuff together, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to help other people get where they want their businesses to be. We focus heavily on sales, of course, because we need to bring in the project. But it's so easy to forget that, we got the sale, we got the project in the pipeline, now we're building the project, that's fantastic. But when you break it down and you look at net profitability, you want to build your business so that you're targeting that net profitability. Otherwise, you're not going to have a business in the future. But just kind of in big, bold, round numbers, if you complete your project with half of the net profit that you intended to, you have to do twice as many projects to make what you're supposed to make. Right. And so the idea being that you protect that net profit at all costs. It's kind of like if you're watching a big game, a big basketball game. Once you've got possession of the ball, you keep possession all the way through. You fight to keep possession as long as possible through the whole game. And that's the same thing with profit. That net profit is your ball, and you got to keep possession of that thing.
100%. Seems like a massive topic too that a lot of people kind of run into at different portions of the project, which we'll touch on. But I mentioned that frog pun earlier. Forrest, you got to tell the audience why you brought 250 frogs to Tempe, Arizona this past year.
Yeah, thank goodness they're not jumping like alive frogs, right? They're little plastic frogs. You go to these conferences and you hear all these people talking, and like for me anyways, my intention when I go to a conference like this is to have one really solid takeaway. And I feel like if I have one actionable takeaway that I can take home to my business to improve how we're doing what we do, I'll have gotten my investment back, right? Because that stuff pays off as you go along. But so my intention, and I brought so many really powerful takeaways to that conference. I'm not sure what your notes say, but what I really wanted to do was have that be memorable. And so my hope was that by having this little frog and the reminder of the frog in the pan analogy, right? That the whole story is like you kind of stay with what you know, and that's the frog in the pan in the cold water. The water slowly heats up, and the myth is that, if you heat that water slowly enough, the frog never knows it got hot until it's boiled to death. And the same thing happens in business where you keep doing things the same way. And we hear this throughout the industry. Well, this is the way I've always done it, right? You keep doing things the same way. And as the heat goes up, and the heat is just really up right now. I don't know if everybody else knows that in the industry or can feel that in the industry, but it's just hot. If you don't change your ways sooner, you're going to end up boiling to death. And so that's my mission, is to help people make those changes as soon as possible to further their company and prepare for kind of some of the interesting things like what's happening in our current economy.
Yeah, absolutely. It was kind of funny at the conference. You had started off and kind of had people stand up or raise their hand for those different impossibles, and you can kind of see, how they fell off and who was doing what, and that was kind of like the engagement that started there. You touched on a lot of different aspects that go into this system, like real-time job costing, determining your sales price, clarity in contract language, and that's just to name a few. And I do think it's important to stress that this is a system that you went over. And while we'll talk mainly about the project wrap-up phase, there are various aspects of this system that need to be implemented for it all to work. But I am curious, just because this is a big topic, where do you think that communication breakdowns typically occur in the remodeling process?
Oh, well, there's a number of important places where the communication breaks down. And I don't know if you remember, we teach that in the CRD program where, managing effective communication, making sure that the ideas gotten communicated across. But the big one is between the sale and the production, that whole pre-production zone, and effectively communicating exactly what the client's expectations are onto the production team. And that's just a huge place where things tend to fall apart if you don't have a real cohesive system in your company.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the main things that stood out to me and others during your presentation was that project wrap-up portion that I had mentioned earlier. And the main takeaway that I had there was that the system that you've developed does not incentivize the client to find problems, especially towards the end of the project, right? And that's a pretty common thing in remodeling. So can you talk about the most important aspects of Project Wrap and kind of how your company approaches this phase?
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. So, and one thing to kind of circle back on and clarify, when you say incentivizing the client to look for problems, and this is something that is so hidden under the surface, right? Where we don't realize we're doing it. It's kind of a subconscious thing that's happening. But by leaving money on the table at the end of the project, what we're doing is we're participating in a conversation around the client is supposed to look and make sure there's no problems before they pay the final bill. That's the conversation we're participating in by leaving money on the table at the end. Right. Yep. And until I say that, it's hard to even realize what's happening because it feels like it's the right thing to do. Right. But it's not the right thing to do because what we're inadvertently doing is telling the client, hey, before I get paid, I want you to make sure I did a good job, right? So we're outsourcing the quality control to the client, and then they're going to get their microscope out and they're going to look for all the little problems, right? Or their magnifying glass, because they feel like that's their job is to look for all the little problems. And so our project close system that we've developed gets rid of the whole thing and motivates the client just to move in and start enjoying their space right away, which leads to them finding fewer issues. And obviously we don't want to leave problems with the project, right? But it's really easy to be so nitpicky that we're finding problems where there really aren't any. And so we don't want to incentivize that in the client. So we're trying to teach people just move into your space, enjoy your space. We're going to come back after 60 days, give you a chance to find anything that doesn't feel right or look right. And we're going to correct it all in one go so that we're not in your house every other day fixing the next problem you found. And so instead of incentivizing find all the problems, we're motivating people just to move into their space and enjoy their space. And one of the neat side effects of that is that the client reviews and testimonials go through the roof as soon as we do that because they're so much happier with what's happened.
Yeah, I think that's an important aspect too that you and I have talked about is it works based on reputation, right? You guys have done this over and over and over again, and that is an important aspect to why it does work. Let's talk a little bit about the completion list versus that 60-day tune-up list, right? I think a lot of people were looking at that 60-day tune-up list as something that they wanted to implement, and again, this is a process. So you have the completion list, which happens before you kind of leave that property. And then you have that 60-day tune-up list after. Let's talk a little bit about those lists and why it's important to differentiate between the two.
Good. Thanks, Anthony. And just a point on the reputation piece is that this whole system is predicated on your company having a great reputation. And you just can't do it without that, right? Because you can't build that client confidence unless you have a proven track record of delivering. And we could talk for days on how to build that reputation. That's not really for this conversation, but just so that everybody understands, you've got to have a great reputation to enable it in order to make this system work. But so what you're talking about is the completion list, and we used to call it a pre-completion list until it made our production team crazy because they're what does that mean pre-completion? I don't even understand, right? So we dropped the pre, now it's just the completion list, but the intention is the same. The idea being that we're not making a punch list when we think we're done. As we're moving towards the end of the project, as we're moving towards the close of the project, we're making that list a couple weeks ahead of time at least, right? Where we're starting to document everything that needs to happen in order to call the contract done. And then, a week and a half, 2 weeks before the end of a project, and it depends on the size of the project when you do this, right? If it's going to be a whole home build, it's going to need to be quite a ways before 2 weeks. And if it's a 3-day project, you obviously don't have 2 weeks to get ahead of it, right? So, but the idea being, we're going to make our list. This is what it means to call our project done according to the terms of our contract. Not according to the terms of being a nice guy, but according to the terms of the contract, right? Because that's business. I'm a nice guy, but that's not my job is to prove how nice I am. My job is to get the contract done. And then we take that list to the client, say, okay, folks, we made a list of everything we think needs to happen in order to call the project done. Do you think we missed anything? As we're walking around, do you see anything that needs to be added to this list so we can actually get this project done on time? And so, the team, sometimes they leave something glaringly obvious, right? So the client can find some stuff and feel like they're participating. That's fine. And then we have signatures at the bottom of this list saying, we all agree that when we finish this list, your project is done, right? And the client signs it and the production team signs it. If the designer's there, they'll sign it. And then we take that couple of weeks and we work through this list, get it all done. Ideally, there's not much there anyways. It's just kind of the normal wrap up things that need to happen on the end of the project. Every once in a while, there's something weird where it's like, oh man, there's a dented refrigerator panel. We need to replace that. Let's get it on the list, right? Or, oh, there's a void in the grout the tile guy missed. Let's get him back here, get that thing on the list, right? So we get all these things on the list. And then we finish on the day we're expected to, or even a little bit early. And this is like 95% of the time, right? There's always weird stuff that's like, I don't know, somebody got sick, or we're missing a faucet that was chipped and we can't get the new one in yet. It's on order. There's weird things that happen in remodeling, but there's nothing that's like, well, geez, there's still a ding in the plastering, right? That's not something that should be found at the end. That's all done by then. And then the project is done. Clients move into your home, enjoy your space. We're going to be back no sooner than 60 days, unless something's flooding or burning, then you should call us right away and we'll come. We're going to be back in 60 days. I'd like you to keep a list, take notes on anything you see that seems amiss or out of order or not completed. We'll come back after that 60 days, get it done. And also, folks, just so we're clear, if you run something into the wall and you dent the sheetrock, who cares? Just put it on the list. We're not going to ask questions. We're not going to worry about it. We just want you to enjoy your space. We're going to come back and take care of all of it. And you should know that there's going to be stuff anyways. You move into the kitchen and you're weighting these pullouts down with pots and pans. Right. Things are going to shift a little bit and need to be tuned, and it's totally normal. And so we're going to come back in 60 days and tune everything up for you so you can get on with life.
Yeah, I love that because, you live in the space and then find some of those things that come with a space being actually lived in. I guess I'm curious too, why 60 days as opposed to 30? What's the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, good question. I feel like the 30 days builds too much tension for people. We want them to actually focus on living, not focus on that 30 days. 60 days is far enough out that there's a lot going on. They're going to focus on living. They're going to find little stuff where it's like, oh man, the screw is loose in the switch plate cover, and so that needs to be tuned up. Fine, put it on the list. But we actually want them to prioritize living in their home and enjoying their home. Our whole mission has been to transform how they live in their home. So let's get them living.
Regarding your team internally, right? We talked a lot about the client portion as far as the project wrap-up phase is concerned. How do you approach the project review phase with your team internally?
That's a good question. And this is an interesting piece. When it comes to job costing, Anthony, if you were to take a poll of companies, and there's some really high-level companies in the NARI organization, right? And there's also a lot of people that are kind of in various stages of climbing the ladder and striving to be excellent, right? And that's the whole point of being a member at NARI, is because you're striving for that excellence, right? You're participating in this pool of people that are trying to be the best. The first realization when it comes to profitability is that, we kind of know how profitable we are by looking at our books or looking at our bank account, but we don't really know why. Right. And so then we start job costing the project. We start talking about, well, you need to do your job costing, right? So people are like, oh, okay, job costing. So at the end of the project, they go and they sit and they look at the numbers. They look at the money they brought in, the money that went out, and kind of like, how did we do? Right. And if they're pretty astute, they'll come up with a gross margin, right? Which is like, according to the cost of goods sold, here's how much we spent on the project. Here's how much was left. And they'll kind of get a gauge of how they performed. That's kind of the early level of trying to figure your company's performance. And then you start getting a little bit more picky and you're like, well, okay, why did these projects do well and these projects didn't do so well, right? So you start taking better notes on the job costing. Instead of just overall numbers, you're looking at the components where you're like, well, cabinets were supposed to cost this much. Oh, we spent an extra 5% because we forgot a couple panels. We had to order those later, or we didn't order enough crown molding. We had to get some drop shipped in because we needed it right now and it cost money. So we spent more on cabinets, right? So you guys start getting a little bit more finicky about things. But then the weird thing with production teams is that the production folks are so focused on doing a good job, and that's good. Like that's their job, is being focused on doing a good job, that sometimes they lose sight of the goals. right? And the goal for a company like ours is it's got to be profitability. It can't just be to make friends all over town. We actually have to be profitable. And then the production team, like with real high level companies, they've got some communication about how they did, and hey, we need to work faster, that kind of thing. But in order to really, really get where we want to be and manage those numbers, we talked about that being within 1% of the estimate. We need to involve the production team at a whole nother level, right? And that whole level is, and there's two parts to it. One is in the development of the project and taking ownership over the development of the project. When the production team is involved in estimating their investment in the project, the results are going to be totally different versus an estimator that said, you've got this many hours, right? So bring the production team in, then they can look at it and say, well, geez, designer, estimator, whoever's in charge of the numbers, I see that, in the past when we've done a column and beam kind of situation that's taken this long, this one's really tricky and I'm going to need more time and I need you to know that now. And here's why, right? That way we're feeding back to the estimator how long things actually take, but we're also setting the production team up for success and giving them the time they need. So that's the first part in development. But then in production, instead of just like, how did we perform at the end of the project, we're feeding the production team, constantly feeding them feedback on how you're performing right now in the project, right? So things are broken down task by task, hour by hour. Here's how the estimate works. And then it's not just like how we're doing, but they see that goal. They see, oh, this chunk of the project is supposed to take 12 hours. How do I do it in 12 hours? Right? Instead of like, well, I don't know, it just took longer. You send guys out, well, we'll just do our best and see how it shakes out. That's kind of how things go in the production world, right? No, instead we're saying, no, this is a business and we've got 12 hours to do this. And one of the funny tricks that we do, we've got this variance form. I think I showed you that variance form where it's like, if you need more time, that's okay. But we need to know that in advance. It can't just be like, oh, geez, it took longer, I need more time. We actually need you involved in the timing of this thing, planning your day, planning your steps, and knowing in advance that you're going to need more time. So our variance system is that before you use the time on a task, you have to ask for your variance in advance. If you ask for it after you've used all your time, it's a straight up no, and we're going to have a hard conversation about what happened and how come you weren't planning ahead. And this isn't because the variance system contains the hours. It's because the variance team system keeps the team focused on what the allowances are in the project, right? So the analogy we use is like a archer with the arrow, and I know I could just go on and on about this. Please be patient with me. But the archer and the arrow, and I'm an archer. Do you ever shoot a bow and arrow, Anthony? Have you ever done that? Yeah. Okay, you shot a bow and arrow. Yeah, cool. So and you kind of hit the target, right?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Now imagine you and I go out into a field. And there's a target out there. I hand you a bow. I hand you an arrow, and then I put a blindfold on you, right? And then I spin you around 3-4 times, and I say, okay, Anthony, shoot and hit the target with the blindfold on. You gonna have any chance of hitting the target?
Yeah, it might hit you. Yeah, no.
You don't even know which way you're pointing, right? Or which way the target is, because you spun around. And that's how production teams feel out there, where they're like, I don't know, I'll take my best shot, right? And so what we're doing by giving them the focus on the allowances, the focus on the budgets, as well as the constant visibility. So we update this thing weekly, where every week they know how they're doing. We give them a status update every week. Here's your progress on the project. Here's how you're doing according to the budget. We've got a green, yellow, red light system where it's like, hey, if you're green or yellow, hey, we're doing okay. If you're in the red, we're talking right now about what we need to fix it. We're taking the blindfold off the archer, right? And you can imagine, like, you're a pretty good archer, right? You with the blindfold on have no chance against somebody that's never held a bow and arrow but can see the target. Right? Plain and simple. And that's what it means to give the production team the visibility they need. Let's take the blindfold off, teach them about the numbers, teach them about success in a company, teach them about gross margin, teach them about being involved in the estimate, and then how to follow up and see what they need to see so that they're tracking and making sure that they're targeting that budget. Take the blindfold off and they have a much better chance of hitting that target, or at least getting really, really close compared to a guy like you with the blindfold on.
Right. It's like, it's also with that visibility comes like a layer of accountability throughout all teams too, throughout the whole process. So it's not just, hey, you're involved in this and we're going to make sure that you genuinely are involved in this and know where you're supposed to go and when, but it's also a level of accountability too, where it's like, hey, this is what we're doing and this is what we've set forth. And I kind of saw that as a constant theme in the whole process. Again, we are just kind of scratching the surface here on one portion of this. But, you talk about labor hours a little bit. You talked about that. You talk about the role of the carpenter and who they're supposed to be talking to and when they're supposed to be talking to the client. You mentioned that in your presentation. So that level or that layer of accountability is, it's important throughout that whole phase.
Awesome. And I'd like to speak to the term accountability, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Because there's some misconception about how this word works. And this word has been weaponized all through the industry in a way that's really unhealthy. A lot of companies, a lot of teams use the word accountability as a synonym for punishment. Mm-hmm. Right? The idea being, if you didn't do well, you need to take accountability. And that means you're going to be punished. Right? And that's not how we build teams. That's not how we build successful companies, by punishing people. It just doesn't work. And accountability is really a simple word. If you take the beginning off and take the end off, it really is about counting. That's it. It's simply about counting, which is metrics, right? And metrics means, let's talk about the numbers. And it doesn't mean you fell short and let's beat you up over it. It means let's just talk about the numbers, right? So we're counting together. And so you asked about our project wrap meeting, right? And that's when we come back together at the end of the project and talk about the project. And that's where the accountability piece really comes back together again. Having all the metrics in place so we can see the schedules. How did we do according to the schedule? Where did we slip and why? Right. There's a funny story in there. If we have time, I'll tell you about how to use a Gantt chart and the before and after stuff, the projected versus the actuals. There's the financial metrics, the labor metrics, right? Where it's like, okay, here's what we expected to spend. Here's what we actually spent. And it's not just, we thought we were going to spend $55,000 building this project. It's that each piece is laid out so that we can actually see where the money went and why. Right. And what's cool about that as a side effect is that as soon as people can see what's the expectation is, we're empowering them to make their own decisions. Right. So they need more lumber. Do we have a budget for more lumber? Right. Oh, we certainly do. Go get some more lumber. We don't even have to talk about it. Right. Just go take care of business. Right. Because you know your numbers, and so the production team knows their numbers. But so at the end of the project, and for us anyways, you could come into our office and you could grab anybody in the office or in the field and say, hey, Forrest said I should ask you what your 3 priorities are. Right. And so you can do this. You walk into our office, hey, ask and grab anybody. What are your 3 priorities here at Castile? And everybody on the team, you'll probably hear it all through the office. On time, on budget, happy client. That's it. Those are the 3 things we care about. On time, on budget, happy client. Right? Yep. So at the end, our project wrap, that's kind of what it's focused on, is how did we do according to those standards? Were we on time? And that means diving into the schedule, right? Were we on budget? That means diving into the hours and the money. And is the client happy? And we've got a whole metric system for managing the client satisfaction all the way through too, right? Was the client happy? And so we go around, we talk about the metrics. We talk about those metrics and work. And this is what's interesting in project wrap meetings. You see, when we visit other companies, you see these meetings happen and there's just a lot of defensiveness, right? It's a really hard conversation because we didn't do very well. Right? We didn't do very well, and everybody's feeling bad. Nobody wants to get yelled at. Nobody wants to be accountable or punished, right? And so you just kind of have this weird stifled conversation. And then there's one person that's saying, well, you should have done this and you should have done that, right? Which just makes everybody feel like crap. And so go ahead.
No, you keep going.
Oh, okay. And so instead of any of that crap, we've got real data. So we can look and figure out exactly what happened. Right. And it's not about who did it. It's about what happened. Right. Well, we needed more cabinet stuff, right? Or, whatever it is. And so we get the facts on the table, and this is just an honest accounting, which is like, let's just get the truth on the table as a team. And this takes time to build this kind of team mentality, right? Especially because, in this industry, it's been such a punishment heavy, shame driven kind of industry, right? And so bringing new people in, it takes a while for them to trust that they're not going to get yelled at when they say I screwed up. Right. But so we get the data on the table, and it's not about who did what. It's about what happened. And we just have that conversation. We are accountable in that we're just counting the data. We're looking at the facts. Right. Right. And then we go around after we've laid the facts on the table. So we're all really clear on what exactly happened. Then we go around in a circle and we give an honest accounting of our performance on the project. So I'm not going to evaluate your performance, Anthony. I'm going to evaluate my performance and share my truth as near as I can, as well as I can. I'm going to say, here's what I did really well. Like and we always start with what we did well. It changes the tone of the conversation. It eliminates defensiveness, right? So we always start with here's where I was successful. Here's what I did well. Here's what I'm proud of. Here's what I want to celebrate, right? That kind of energy. So it might be, I remember in the past, I really struggled with client communication, and I kind of gave control of the project over to the clients in the past. This time I was really on top of my client communication, and I kept control by knowing my truth, by knowing what was really going on in the project. So when the client came to me with questions, I had really good information for them. And I was really proud that I did that. And I saw the impact of that. They trusted me. And that was huge. And I'd like to keep doing that because it makes a difference. Right. Yeah. And then on the opportunity, well, I actually really struggled with my project dynamics and what I noticed on this project is that I was really struggling to manage my labor. And I think it's because my project wasn't as tidy as it could have been. I spent a lot of time looking for the things I needed. I remember I couldn't find my speed square one day, and I was pulling my hair out looking for my speed square, and I needed it. And I think I'm going to see better success in the future if I actually keep a tidier job site, keep my tools organized, know where everything is. And then I'm not going to burn so much time and energy being frustrated because I can't find what I need. Right. And so we just go around the room and have that honest kind of conversation, and that's it. And then everybody leaves with their win and their struggle or whatever it is. And then their supervisor ideally is kind of keeping in mind, oh, here's the thing they struggled with. And if it happens 2-3 projects in a row, then maybe it's like, hey, so you need some more support around this piece. You know, you mentioned the job site thing. It's still kind of happening, right? So what can I do to help you get to that next level to where you're feeling a little bit more organized and a little more efficient with your time, right? So instead of like, you need to do better, we're like, oh, you want to do better. How do I help?
Yeah, no, I love that. You just said too, you're not like looking at the who, it's like we're looking at the what and maybe when too, like when in the process it happened and what we can, we did and how we can correct moving forward. But not doing the who thing. And I do want to mention too, just for the listeners that Forrest has got a lot of experience in team and leadership management as well. And we'll touch on that towards the end of the podcast. But I did want to jump into this true false test segment here. So I'm going to give you 4 statements and you tell me if they're true or false. Is that easy enough?
Okay, let's see how we do.
All right, let's get into it. Number 1, it is possible to complete the project within 1% of the estimate.
True. Consistently true.
Love that. It is possible to finish the project on the planned completion date.
That's absolutely possible, and we do it 95% of the time.
3, it is possible to collect 100% of the contract before the project is completed.
That's true. We are fully paid up right about in the middle of the production process. So we call it start of installations or phase 10 payment. We collect our final payment as soon as the floors are down, walls are painted, before we start hanging cabinets, before we start setting toilets. We've collected the final payment for the project.
I love that. I think a lot of listeners are going to kind of zero in on that portion and kind of want to find out more. So the last one
and
here.
Before we go on, you can't just do that. You can't only have a chair with one leg. A chair's got to have 4 legs. So reach out to me if you want to talk about all 4 legs. But so there's a lot of different things that need to happen in order to make that piece come together. But yes, that's how it works.
Awesome. And then the last one for us here for this segment is it is possible to get to a 0-punch list at project completion.
It is true. And that is one of the most contested pieces in the industry that we've talked about with all different kinds of people, because it's true that it's not perfect, right? So when we talk about zero punch is more of a direction than a destination.
Is there anything that you wanted to touch on that we didn't talk about? I know that there's a lot within this, and we'll put a QR code at the end of this so that listeners can kind of go directly to you. But is there anything that we kind of missed that you wanted to touch on before we get off here?
And so there's a bigger overarching concept when it comes to teams in this, and thank you for pointing out the importance of teams and team management. Make sure you've got the right people in the right seats. Give them the visibility they need for success, right? And so our whole team, we don't keep our profits secret, and our books are open for the whole team to understand. That's the visibility they need, like taking that blindfold off, right? Or like a car with a windshield, right? Most companies are running like a car that has the windshield blacked out. Mm-hmm. The people driving the company can't see where they're supposed to go, so they can't make those corrections in real time they need to make to stay on the road and between the lanes, right? So hire the right people, give them the visibility they need, show them what success looks like, and then instead of driving them towards success, support them for reaching towards that success.
Yeah, I really love what you just said there. You said so that they can understand the books, not so that they can see them, but that they can understand them. That is huge. Right? It's not just being transparent for the sake of transparency. It's being transparent for the sake of, hey, we're all in this together, and this is going to make us better, right? You knowing what this is and understanding this is only going to make all of us better. I love that. Forrest, if listeners could make one change this week, again, we just went through a lot, and there's so much more, but if they can make one change this week to better protect their profit in production, what would you recommend?
I think the focus is on That's a really hard question to answer, Anthony, because everybody's company is at a different, like it's going up a ladder, right? So everybody's on a different rung. And so like you're asking me, what would it take to get to the next rung? And it's different for every company depending on which rung they're at, right? But what I would say is increase visibility, not just for leadership, but for the whole team. Increase visibility, even if you can do it in one small step, increase that visibility so people can see what's in front of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to stress again that this is a system. I know we've talked about that. We just scratched the surface here on one aspect. Forrest, if listeners want to learn more about real-time job costing, how to determine your sales price, clarity in contract language, leadership and team management, like I said earlier, and one that really stood out to me was the lead carpenter versus the project manager models. We'll include your QR code, like I said earlier, but where else can they find you?
So send me an email, Forrest with 2 R's at CastileKB.com. Really good way to reach me. Send me an email. Call me on the business line, 541-554-6974, Eugene, Oregon. Or, just look me up online, Forrest Castile, in Eugene, Oregon, and you'll come across me and drop me a line, and I'm here and I'm anxious to talk to everybody.
Awesome, Forrest. And we'll include that for the listeners. Forrest, thank you again for joining us and sharing your insights. If you are looking to strengthen your business, improve profitability, and connect with other professionals committed to raising the bar in remodeling, please visit NARI.org to learn more about the National Association of the Remodeling Industry. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to Trade Secrets, Remodeling with NARI on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, Forrest.